I wonder at times about the justified amplification of having served. I was willing. The singing is terrible, the memory engraved, the sermon a symptom, and the reception a finish line to the affirmational circle of technique forgive and take. What about the hatred of God for astrologers? For expertise, in one thing only. A singular perspective that divines, then intuits all things correctly. A singular reference for the prism of expertise. How confident, how aloof. What does God hate? How sure are you that your responsibility of expertise will have no accountable inflation to my experience? Any accountable conflagration to every area of your own expertise. An exchanging denouncement of conceptual generality, working through a blank space for content like an astronaut pumping the gas while floating in a Tesla, and finally on our way where? Drafting lines through geostationary orbit with nothing but tow ropes for conversations between us. Conversation, for use, is still like playing Go Fish or trading baseball cards. Valuable cards are saved for unique situations, and the most used, sentimentally valuable concept card for the audience intended has to be the word faith. Antidote and innuendo. Thesis, antithesis, experience and intuition. A vacuum of breathless verbatim for altitude towards the surfacing point of everything. A sensationally motionless tingling of dissipation for the intellect still held to the limits of conscious interpretation, wrapped up in a tortilla for the first principal function of aspirational appetites found in each letter. Sour cream and salsa for the good taste's attribute of emotional ether, and like an autocorrect reflex you know when they play their faith card, they've hit the bottom of the deck. That used to bore me, or be a symbol of a coming boredom, because I know now as a player myself the state of all the cards in their hand. Call or go fishing, and for me it sort of depends on the circumstance. Describe it again, sir. Cognitive development of sensational experience would have developed slowly, and then more particularly as the mode of transference became specifically in line with a satisfactory outcome. I know they're dead, because none of them can imagine why you would have a value to me beyond the revenge aspects they fund in themselves. The lie of how everything happened keeps them in line, and me notably invisible. P. Diddy and the Fam, Victory. The beautiful thing about myths is the ability to relate internal processes as arch aspects of ourselves, divided and pointed out, and then also the complications associated with overlapping capacities of disparate tensions, appetites, longings, and beyond that, yet the ability to go past the vague and exquisite drawings, to your own sense of vital participation with the creative aspects themselves, a little out ahead of ourselves. The cognitive capacity developed specific to the point of relating our sensational experience, awareness, jargon to poetry in motion, capable of following star and order, until the orders become capable enough to follow me also. Fully in control, know so, believe, a hint, a description, and when we harness it we have a chance to describe something of the unseen as well. Direct line currents for Tesla and Einstein, the infamous founders also. Marking time with the numbers by sensationally intuiting before, and experiencing sensation after. How so? There is a sudden confusion to defending our certainties. How unaware, but all the same unnerving our innocent, really honest curiosity is becoming for those around us. The value of assimilating to their certainty. Certainly, but what are your certainties again? Certain of your good, and not your evil. Is that your promise? Your knowledge memory of Golgotha? As long as we're in line with the logical strain of certainty that led us there in the first place. With Franklin Graham's ethic. How is it possible that I could be street salesman? Send me some money. Proof of what? It's working. What do you want? More but better. Bitch please. Certainties in exchange for reaching to the link. Reach for the knowledge, then walk with the faith. An answer to vague epithets like faith and salvation, in defense of a vague contagion. The value aspect of our certainties, and what is worth defending. It is like or feels like a dissection. Sublime curiosity for a biologist's scalpel, obliviously ignorant regarding the frog below, still alive and watching. And thank you for the content, previously on Ready to Die. When we think of the people that we love the most, the more intimate the affinity, the less and then least likely it is for us to receive anything from or in exchange to the sacrifice. Distance, and a lack of affinity betray the root of our determinations with a tape measure marked in light years. My aim is, he squats in house, and pisses in toilet. We all dream of a golden-walled sarcophagus dug deeply into the ethereal and from where the pressurized environment. Release yourself, unwind. I'm so pretty. I'm so pretty. Okay. Pop culture prophets. Rewind. What American pastor is not. A ruminate cast for boys behind the cloth. Because it's so important. What is? Participation has always been the anticipation for me, and for the most part. I have stayed away from the prissy resentments of the office administrator. That which is but is not ever relevant or necessary for the people of performance, we're letting 'em slide for a bit. Human languages are the simultaneous and congruent processes of labeling and creating, adding to things, over and underwriting, projection, win-loss, the derivation of thought inside an intuition, displayed by an experience. Those resonating sensations thrown against a wall of thesis-antithesis, now amassed against a singular contrast of discovery. A description or process rendering of observation. The sensational experience grew cold though and callous when harnessed to an amplified jargon, related merely to contrast. For the modern scientific skeptic wrapped in skeptification, skeptifying, there is an unexpressed accusation that science has robbed us of something much different or better. Conversely, the sneaking suspicion that their own identity has already been described, without the knowledge but before the hand that revealed it in themselves. There is a great confusion for the necessity of a certain kind of progress, in order that one might discover first, projecting later, if that patience ever existed, the best of themselves and own potentials. Notorious thugs. We have a reason to not lose our skepticism. The observation, for the skeptist, is not to participate by analysis, the claim even for observation or process, but to re-evaluate the terms, always from the distance, possibly. Not as simple as the terms of relevance and accuracy, but whether the generalized context or process has or have specifics that were left unamplified, out, just missed, overlooked. The answer is yes already, so what is it? Skepticism has proof access of the misleading. I am speaking here of the indifferent. This means that anything observed is observed inside of, or as part of, maybe a cycle, and the lack of permeance of form has never assumed by itself a consequent lack of existence, certainly therefore no particular description of the premised terms. Imagine filling a room with professional skeptics charged not with evaluating but producing the creative progress of humanity, and then observing them for a lifetime. Entropy as a long cycle perspective of emergence. A lack of certainty for them is an accusation, and a simple proof to access. The proof of absence as a veil over everything, for he too then has forged a relevant place among their meanings. The accusation for lack of certainty from the skeptic is the same as what are you afraid of from the tyrant. I wonder what would happen to a civilization that decided against the wheel, put on as a crime perhaps against the joys of density spacing. The eternal distance a 2-mile walk would provide from a subject like dizzy and the confusion, with no other way to do it. To say, if I couldn't do this or live like that I couldn't be happy, a proof of your willingness to sacrifice everything. Good for you. the incongruities of a potentially relevant observational potential of analysis. For instance, would it be possible to define the model scale attributes of atmospheric conditions for a flat Earth, horizon perspective dynamic? The intuitional experience is in the description of the experience, and always right after, but remembering this time beforehand. Whether it's absolutely right is the accusation of the skeptic, and the insecurity of rational explanation for the scientist. When we put right before accuracy, we end with atomic notation. Accurate. XO. It is what we understand so far about this thing and that. Why a skeptical scientist should never also be evangelical, knowing for the sake of an evidentiary witness what is good and powerful already. Projecting excited impatience for God to finally come down, and eventually for science to catch up. On the intuitional fear of an evangelical. A rational understanding for a current state of relevancies is to admit we know nothing still about the certainty of ourself. God saves us from the certainty of not knowing. We know that it's possible for an external scope perspective to change the conditioning principle. Would itself as an experience possibly change the perspectives of our intuition, and from that perspective our prior certainties were not wrong, but represent for now why we have become somewhat skeptical? What is this like? A crush in Central Park. A boat in a whirlpool with a pyramid of water skiers, not so sure of ourselves when there's no way for sure to know where we're going. Let us become then very certain people. Certain about what? It depends on who gets there first. After all, is it not the strength of conviction we all admire most? The mystery. Santa Claus will offer presents, from what I understand. Prometheus though will decide what's left in the stockings. A graduated hierarchy of understanding that never ends, hope for a skeptical scientist and for myself. Your present uncertainty then makes my present understanding ever more likely than your own. Our language is defined by letter through memory, by meaning to in the ping of an energy relation. By perspective, the surface platform rendering of a multiplied essence finds I think it doesn't take too much as a root formulation to get it. The singular momentums must be thinking then. It doesn't take long to understand most things generally, lacking specifically pride of due credit for having been persistent. One danger for us then, is that we participate with them on this project of securing the value of the justification, sort out the arrangement of content by agreeing with the premise, sensations. If we say gladly it's okay, we're not supposed to be perfect. What's received by them is the justified relief for not having been perfect already. Is Franklin Graham compromised? Few corners like that, you could get the whole tent to fall in. The justified equilibrium. It's all a matter of process, said the scientist to the skeptic. The religious man shouts back, his name is Atom. Three guys walk up to Job and a campfire. It is a terse relationship and a tense sensation with ourself, the imperfection we are forced to experience as ourselves, in the light of a new contrast for when we finally become that someone else. He puts the lotion on the skin. Jesus in a well and still hiding. What is that we want, from when we die? To be remembered. Now before then. The birth of tragedy. A tragic hero is tragic specifically because he's justified, qualified by all the stories. Yet I do not think the gladiator a tragic hero. He was by reflection, I think, coincidence to a tragic lifestyle. I am so sophisticated. He's so sophisticated. Drug Dealers Anonymous.